Welcome to another episode of Custom Cards. This is, in my opinion, the best episode so far, and that is because of a few reasons. The first reason is I am no longer responsible for picking the submitted cards. I let an actual expert do that this time. It is no other than the creator of the Ishtal set that I made a video on a few months ago. It was an entire set of the Ishtali region. That entire set was made by Yuri. And for this custom card video, we once again opened a submission channel on the Discord. But I let Yuri take care of it. He picked every single card, explained to me why he picked a certain card, made notes. We went over them in a Discord call. And because we went over every card and kind of thought about what the applications were, what made the card cool, like the thematics and everything, the video and the selection of cards is just much better. So before I begin, I just want to say thank you so much, Yuri, for all the work that you have done. And the first card we have here is the High Silver Mare, made by 02. It's a 2-mana landmark from Demacia. All allies with Scout are elites. If allies with Scout have struck 12+ times this game, all elites have Scout. So there are a few more landmarks in the game that have a condition, which is the Star Spring and the Battle Tree. When you meet those conditions, when you complete them, when you fulfill them, you win the game instantly. This does not quite do that, but if you build your deck in the right way, and I'm not sure if you just want to put in a bunch of Scouts with some elite synergy, if you just want to play overall good elite units like Jarvan, maybe the Ardent Tracker, but once this is complete, you basically get a permanent Jarvan 3 effect, which is obviously very powerful. So even though it doesn't quite say win the game on the spot, it might as well, because you're going to have a very powerful effect for the rest of the game. Also, this does level in deck, so you don't have to drop this on turn 2. It is nice if you have some elite synergy, because you want to get that off as soon as possible. But all you need to do is strike with Scouts 12 times, and it just says struck. So that means you can do it on blocks too. I really like what this card does, because Scouts have been trying to go into that elite route ever since Jarvan got released. And with a card like this, we could even see Quinn make a bit of a comeback, I don't know if that's copium, but Quinn being an elite could actually make the difference when you have a Battlesmith or something on the board. Giving Quinn and Valor +1/+1 might actually make her a playable card. So, good start. Interesting landmark. Would certainly make Demacia a little more interesting to play and would tie some of their loose tribes or archetypes together a little bit, which is something I just love to see. Next is the Greedy Robber, which is, in my opinion, one of the funniest cards in this video. It's made by Emiya, and it's a 3-mana unit from Shurima. Greedy Robber. Vulnerable. When you cast a Lucky Find on an ally, cast it on me as well. Last Breath, grant my killer my keywords and my Last Breath effect. The reason this is really interesting is because of the vulnerable keyword, so you're kind of playing like hot potato with your opponent. It brings these really interesting mind games too, like do you want to use your strongest ally to kill this and get the Lucky Find keywords that you used on Greedy Robber, but you also get the vulnerable keyword, so it might be easier to kill that strongest unit for the opponent and then they get the keywords back. I mostly just love the theme of this card, where it's a Greedy Robber, so he's stealing all this stuff from the Lucky Finds, and then the killer takes all the stuff that the Greedy Robber stole and becomes empowered, but also gets vulnerable because, other units want to steal that stuff and take it for themselves. It's just such a fun design. Playing this card should be beneficial for you, because you're going to be the deck with Lucky Finds, so it's not like your opponent's really going to buff up one big unit. Just an incredible meme card and should create so many fun little moments in Runeterra. It's probably not going to be competitive, but that's not something you want from a card like this. You just want to have fun with it, and it does that in the best way possible. The next card is made by Nolan, a 2-mana 1/2 from Piltover, Sumpwork Scout, with the keyword Augment. When you summon another Sumpwork Scout, grant Sumpwork Scouts everywhere +1/+1 and create a copy of me in the top 5 cards of your deck. This is obviously like one of the members of the Kyrian Sumpworkers, but in his own card. It's also 1/2, so I really like that consistency. But this is very obviously just like another piece for copy decks that are in Piltover. And this one specifically, it's like Miss Rates and Sumpworkers had a child. I think that this card is way more interesting than the Kyrian Sumpworkers, because they're not just like elusive damage with something like a little bit of AoE damage. You actually get rewarded in more of a Legion Marauder style for growing them and making them bigger and bigger. So once you get the chain going, they start a little slower than the Kyrian Sumpworkers, but they basically fund themselves, so it doesn't really stop. Once you get the Sumpwork Scouts going, they keep going. And they also create copies in the deck And if you draw that copy, it will activate Augment on all of them. So once this gets going, their attack stat and even their health stat will grow very, very big, very fast. And what I also really like is that a card like this will lead to a more unit-centered deck for Piltover, which is pretty unusual for them, but still very much in the Regent spirit. I really like this. Next up, we have a champion card, Nunu, made by Andy. 6 mana, 4/6 from Freljord. Play, manifest a random Yeti, Poro, or Elnuk. Level up, you summon 5+ Yetis, Poros, or Elnuks. I just love this play effect. Like, when you look at a card like Nunu or Willump, it just has to do something like manifesting. They just feel so magical, like the boy and his Yeti, and they go on magical adventures. So the fact they manifest something is just so cool. Obviously, a 6 mana 4/6 is pretty weak, but Nunu does level in deck, so that should probably make up for it. And if you play a deck like Poros, then Nunu should almost always level up by turn 6. But let's see where the Yeti actually is. What happens when Nunu levels up? Nunu and Willump gets the fearsome keyword, still gets the play effect, but when you add a Yeti, Poro, or Elnuk to your hand, grant it and all copies of it everywhere impact. I really like that Willump is only here for level 2, and the creator also said that Call of the Wild is the champion spell for Nunu and Willump, which is also just super thematic, and I just really, really like the usage of the new impact and manifest keyword. It feels perfect on a champion like this. We've seen a bunch of Yeti decks, which didn't really have a good champion for them. We've seen a bunch of Poro decks, usually plays without a champion. We've seen Elnuk decks, which is played with Ezreal, which just feels completely out of place. So it's really nice to see a champion that would actually fit in a deck like that. And it doesn't matter which one, because Nunu and Willump would fit in all 3 of them. Also, the impact stacks will go really fast, so if you build your deck correctly, it will make them a perfectly fine win con too. I don't really like the fearsome keyword here. I think that should have just been impact or even something like regeneration. I think it's just there because Willump looks kind of scary in this artwork, but I can't see it for any other reason. Because Nunu basically has a magic that lets him manifest or change reality with his childish creativity, which is actually why Willump looks so much friendlier than other Yetis. So the fearsome keyword, I don't see it. I think that's my only complaint about this card. Next is the Shifty Musicians, made by Avi. 3 mana from Bilgewater, elusive. Support, give my supported ally Fearsome and Nexus Strike, nab 1 this round, and it is a 1/3. So even more nab synergy. I feel like in almost every video I had to pick some kind of nab card just because, you know, I'm a Bilgewater enjoyer and I actually kind of like the nab keyword. And this card will give a very consistent nab source, which is something I've been asking for a while. Give me a card that stays on the board and lets you nab over the course of a game. I really appreciate how the support effect is done in this card, because Avi thought about giving her elusive to not die as easily, but also gave her only 1 attack so it isn't broken as like an elusive attacker, but also thought about giving the ally fearsome to ensure that this can't just be blocked by other elusives. Another great thing is that this fits perfectly on curve with nab, because you want the allegiance cards on turn 4 and you want the black market merchants on turn 2. Also, Yuri did submit a card himself that is just hilarious, and this card would fit perfectly with it. So the card that Yuri submitted is Kilash has Wares, a 0 mana focus speed from Bilgewater. Pick a card in hand to put into your opponent's hand. Plunder, create a fleeting if you have coin in your hand. So that's a bit of a downside. You have to give your opponent a card, but you get a fleeting if you have coin, which is a 4 mana slow speed. Nab 4. So with a card like this, decking out your opponent actually becomes a real possible win con for Nab without making the card like completely broken. Because, you know, if that was a real thing, you would need to have something that holds it back, which in this case is giving your opponent a card. The implications of this card are just so funny to me. Imagine that you're playing against a Scion Draven deck, and you nab one of their Sump Dredgers or something. And you're like, well, you need to discard with this card. And I don't really have a card I want to discard. So what you do is you give them back the card that you nabbed from them so that you can try again and nab 4 different cards. Something about nabbing a card from your opponent and then giving it back to them like, hey, here you go. This was yours. You dropped this. It's just so funny. It just reminds me of that voice line from the Black Market Merchant where he goes, oops, you dropped something. So yeah, it's just hilarious. But you do need to activate Plunder to actually get the good stuff. And you know, the card you get is still fleeting and it is still slow speed. And let's not forget about the whole reference. You know, I've played some Elder Scrolls, so it is funny. Next up is the Fey Prankster made by God. 2 mana 2/2. When I'm supported, grant me a random keyword. Support, transform my supported ally into an exact copy of me. So I am an Ionia hater, but support is actually the archetype from Ionia that I can accept. And this mechanic is really simple, but also just genius, because you do actually need a unit that will get transformed. It can lead to some combos that are pretty abusable, but it only has 2 health to begin with, so it can be stopped quite easily before it like escalates into something ridiculous. And you actually do need other units to get supported by this. A card that would be good for this that I can imagine is the Ren Shadowblade, where you can actually use the Shadow Fiends that it generates to get rid of those elusive units and just transform them into Fey Pranksters. I don't know how this works with Sand Soldiers, but it would be kind of insane if they all chain together like the way I imagined they would. It's a simple concept, good execution, very creative, and again, the golden formula of investment equals reward. And this next card, alright, I'm looking at the artwork right now, but I'll pull it up for you guys. Corrupted Other Puss, made by Cryo. 3 mana from Bandle City, augment, strike, create a prank in hand, and it's a 0/4. I just love the little eyebrows, like it's an angry otter puss. Alright, so anything that can generate pranks over the course of a game is a pretty good concept, and I love the combination of pranks and augment. It actually does make a lot of sense to combine those two, because there's only like 2 units in Bandle City that have augment or something. It should probably start out with 1 power, because having it literally not be able to deal any damage to actually trigger the strike effect without using augment does feel a bit weak. It's here for the artwork. It's one of the funniest things I've seen in this submission cycle. Alternate Endings, made by Demir, is a 3 mana fast speed spell from Piltover. Redirect a fast or slow spell that costs 4 or less. So you can see this as Piltover's version of Deny almost. It's not quite as annoying to play against, but it has way more funny implications. Like, one really funny thing is if your opponent tries to use a Glimpse Beyond on one of their preys, and then you redirect that glimpse onto their Viego. It's like, well, you get 2 cards, but instead of killing your 0/1, you're going to kill your big win con. So we asked Demir, and he said that you can only change the target according to what is stating on the spell you are redirecting. And also, you read this from the perspective of the player who cast the spell. So if the enemy uses a Glimpse Beyond, you can only target it to another enemy unit, not to one of yours, because it says kill an ally unit. But for Mystic Shot, where it says you can target anything at all, you can direct it into anything. So if your opponent is trying to shoot you for lethal with their Mystic Shot, you can redirect it onto their own nexus. This could also be used as an anti-deny card, because you can change the target of deny onto something else on the stack. And next is Worthiness of an Aspect. 3 mana burst speed from Targon. Give a unit +2/+0 this round. If it dies this round, create a copy of it as an additional option the next time you invoke and grant it +1/+1. This card is awesome because it is just so Targonian. You can see this is like another Zillion spell from Shrima where you can revive a champion if it dies when that spell is on them, but just made in the most Targon way possible. And I think the fact that you deny yourself an invoke to get the ally back justifies the 3 cost. And you still have to pay the mana to play it again. So you would obviously want to play this with a card like Spacey Sketcher, Zoe's super cool star chart, because you want to use those cheap invokes to get the ally back that you use this on instead of using your big invokes, because you would probably still take a Great Beyond over an ally that died most of the time, unless it's your win con. And this card was made with the concept for Pantheon in mind. So in that context, it just fits him really well, because with Pantheon getting that last power boost before he dies to take someone with him and then come back while invoking. And to continue the Targon train, we have another card from Emiya, 9 mana, Herald of the Cosmos. Play, draw an Aurelian Soul. So I don't know why this card is called Herald of the Cosmos. It should just be a soul boat. But okay, we'll look past that. The first Celestial you play every round costs 0. If they already cost 0, summon an exact copy of them if they are a follower, or cast them twice if they are a spell. And it is a 6/8. So I think it's great that this is 9 mana, because you either play Aurelian at turn 8 where you get the Eclipse Dragon, or on turn 10 if you don't. This just works really well with Aurelian Soul, because first of all, it helps him level up a bit quicker, and if he did, it gives him that last little bit of power he wants to really close out a game, which, you know, he shouldn't really need, because if you get 1 Living Legends when Aurelian Soul is leveled, the game always ends. And I also love that this is kind of similar to my favorite follower from Beyond the Bandlewood, Mirror Mage, but it has a slightly different effect, and having something like this already in Targon is just pretty nice. Also, the artwork for this is just so fitting, and it just looks stellar. The next card has a new keyword, which is something I don't usually do, but this keyword is basically just renaming something that is already in the game, called Reload. Draw 1, give it fleeting. So a card that's already in the game could just have next round reload, and then you'd have Pool Shark. Also, I think this name already gives away who it is. And if you didn't guess, it is none other than Twisted Fate's better half, Graves. As a 2-mana 2/2 from Bilgewater, I love that he's also a 2/2. Play, create a Grand Heist in hand if you don't have one. Strike, reload once. Level up, you've cast Grand Heist. And Grand Heist is a 7-mana slow speed spell. Deal 2 to all enemy units and the enemy nexus. Grant your nexus whenever you play a fleeting card, reload. When discarded, grant enemies vulnerable. So after you cast a Grand Heist, Grace will level up and he becomes a 3/3 with quick attack. Each time you deal damage, reload. When you discard a card, shuffle a copy of it into your deck. The first time each round you have 10 cards in hand, create a treasure in the top 10 cards of your deck. So there is a lot going on here, but I think Reload is a really good name for fleeting card mechanic, and it also fits perfectly into the whole Bilgewater theme. The other region that has guns, Piltover, also likes their fleeting cards, so you could even translate it to that region too. And there are some bonus points for not just giving Graves quick attack on level 1, because every champion in the game already has that nowadays. And since Twisted Fate is Graves' better half, I'm glad that they synergize so well together, because if Graves does come to LOR, I really hope that they let them synergize in a similar way, because they are just a team that should not be separable. Letting Graves level through the Grand Heist is a very cool mechanic, and Grand Heist itself is a really strong card, and I think Graves will be played just because of that. You will never run out of hand space. It's also pretty cool that he has a little bit of discard synergy, because that first of all makes him more flexible, and a fleeting card actually gets discarded at the end of the round. So the level 2 Graves saves you from decking yourself accidentally, and that would also let him be played as more of a aggro champ, because, you know, if you play more aggro, then you wouldn't get to that level 7. So discarding that card and giving everything vulnerable is a pretty good upside. But let's be honest, we play Graves to get into level 2 if this is what it was. So I adore that he can give you treasures, because that just fits Graves so well. I think it would have been cooler if Graves had Overwhelm instead of quick attack, and the treasure making would relay more to him hitting the nexus. So it's more like plunder a little bit. Reloading every time you deal damage can be a bit much though, especially because it can kind of just be like, let Graves sit back and watch others do like small bits of damage so it can proc. And that can also just be a big downside, because you just obliterate a lot of your own cards with something like a Misfortune ability or a red card. All in all, this is a really, really solid Graves concept, I think. There is a lot going on. It is not a simple concept, but the fact that he creates treasures and does this reloading is just so thematic for Bilgewater that I just love it. And here is another Targon card made by Half. Solemn Sanctitude, Overwhelm, Spell Shield, Daybreak, double my power and health, Nightfall, summon an exact copy of me as a 5/4. This card is both so flexible and also so specific at the same time. It is paradoxical and fascinating, which is very fitting for a mythical being like this. The choice of keyword for a card like this could have gone wrong so easily, but I think Half nailed it completely here. Because no matter what version you play, Overwhelm and Spell Shield will always be very useful without completely removing counterplay. Except maybe, you know, the Nightfall effect with hand buffing, like Destiny's Call. Do you rather want one fat single Overwhelm unit that you can buff with like some of the stuff that is in Targon? Or are you scared of a flash freeze that your opponent is throwing out that can shut down that one big unit? So you want to go wide instead? And if you don't have to go wide, maybe you can just overwhelm a unit with one big unit, because that is harder to block. And also, one thing I do have to mention, play Destiny's Call on this card, like I said, with a Ravoon on the board. That is a 26-24 twice. That's a pretty good way to end the game. I'll take that. And last, but absolutely not least, we have a card made by Winter Sands, Snnuy. Round start, create a 0-cost printer in hand. And I'm a 5/5 for 6 mana. Level up, you summon a printer. And the printer is a 0-mana Cannon Pixma MG 2570S. Can't attack, can't block. When I'm summoned, destroy me to level up a Snnuy on board if you have one. And then we get Snnuy level 2, the Viego printer. Round start, summon a Viego if you don't have one. If you have summoned enough for content, win the game. I just love the artwork that Winter Sands makes. And if you haven't seen any of the other artworks, I'll post a link in the description below to Twitter, where you can see more of some Mogwai artwork or some Grappler artwork. And I'm just grateful to have some fantastic stuff made after some of my meme decks like Monoshirima and the Viego printer. Thank you, Winter Sands. So with that amazing card from Winter Sands, we've reached the end of another custom card episode. Once again, huge shout out to Yuri for helping me with this. I would not be able to make the videos like this without his help. So in the future, it's going to be the same thing. He's going to pick the cards that will appear in the video, and I'm just going to review them with some of his notes and with some of my takes. And yeah, I really hope it improved the quality, but I definitely think it improved the quality by a lot. Having a Discord call to go over all the cards, having somebody help me pick out the best cards in the bunch that were submitted. I'm just really grateful to have somebody help me with this, so thank you. And thank you guys for watching these videos and sharing your opinions about these custom cards. Going forward, this will most likely be a monthly thing, so keep an eye on the Discord. Look at the rules because you can only submit 3 cards and no more. So if you submit more cards than 3, your submissions will not be looked at because it just became too much for us to oversee. So please keep that in mind for next time if you want to have a chance to have your custom card appear in these videos. And with that out of the way, have a great day, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow for a new video.